Hello, and a warm welcome to ArtHouse. I'm Melinda Akinlami. On today's episode of the program, Bumi Augusto takes the audience outside in her solo show. Then Professor Pejulai Wola shows us her latest book and textile work on indigo. Today's group exhibition at AAG. You will get the details after we get some words of inspiration from this veteran artist.
Experimentation is the unparalleled freedom of whatever comes to the mind of a creative in the use of ideas and materials.
Finesse is an exhibition by a group of artists at the Affinity Art Gallery in Lagos.
Three artists based in various countries display their different strokes and show emotions in this group exhibition titled Finesse at the Affinity Art Gallery in Lagos. The manager, Moni Aisida, reels out the names of the participants.
Daniel Pengafa Oshundaro, Nigerian artist. Muofe Manabela, she's a South African artist. And Valerie Etitinu, she's a Nigerian artist based in Switzerland. And finesse, if you know the definition of the word finesse, is about like skill. And so basically it's a nod to the skill of these three artists, and they're one of the best in doing what they do. So this exhibition is an ode to these artists and their skill and the intent and the level of detailing that goes into the work that they create, basically.
In this ode to finesse, the artists explore some fresh topics. It appears the memory of the COVID-19 pandemic still lingers, but in a good way. It gave room for experimentation and has become an inspiration to many creatives to see life differently and not take many things for granted.
The pandemic allowed a lot of artists to kind of regroup and sit in their studio and then take stock of what's really important to them, and also allow them to experiment. I think those are two major things. So because they had time, they were able to sit down and try things that they would never have tried before because there was no pressure to show, exhibit. So they had time to experiment, and that usually leads to growth. And then another thing, obviously, that I think has influenced artists, especially younger artists, is the democratization of the art industry. So they're able to, the internet kind of picked up the slack where there were no longer physical shows. And so a lot of artists were open to a wider audience, new collectors from across the world, because everyone was looking for art. Since they couldn't go physically to shows, people were searching up artists, like looking up new things and finding new artists that they eventually fell in love with and liked, and now still follow their careers post-pandemic.
This new vista is reflected in the works of art created.
Like Valerie's work, the work that you reference, are all about like the human emotion and how there's nothing new under the sun, which is why you can see kind of like the solar system and how it works, things that look like the sun, and how human emotions, like we go through cycles. Everyone who's feeling sad or angry or happy now, those emotions have been in existence for decades, centuries, and they come and go. But what is important is the relationships that we are able to establish, because those relationships ground us and help us to process those emotions. So whether it's happiness or sadness or loneliness, having people around to kind of connect with, they help you to process those emotions.
And each one has its own uniqueness.
Daniel's work is all about kind of combining like classical imagery, like you said, Manet and the Caravaggios and all that. And those bodies of work then were very heavily influenced by religion. You know, the Raphaels, they did the Sistine Chapels and all that. So those bodies of work, what we call classical art, is very heavily influenced by religious connotations and ideas. So him kind of bringing those into his works and adding a more contemporary element, then I can see why you would say, yes, they have like those religious elements. It's because of his influence from like classical art. So yeah, I would say that.
The artists aren't here to explain the images themselves, but the gallery manager has done justice by giving the audience a window into why these artists represent finesse.
Lovely works there. Now to our next feature. It's a two-in-one show by renowned female artist and scholar, Professor Peju Laiwola in Lagos.
It's Peju Laiwola's Day in the Sun. Friends, associates, and other distinguished personalities have gathered to celebrate this woman of many parts, an artist, professor of art history at the Department of Creative Arts, University of Lagos, and founder, Women and Youth Art Center, amongst other laurels.
Peju Laiwola. Just stay like that.
After tributes to the celebrant, they move inside to enjoy this show, which is the unveiling of her book, titled Indigo Reimagined, Rethinking Adire in Yoruba Fashion and Textile Modernity, which is linked to an earlier exhibition. To add to this, a textile exhibition is on hand physically to reveal another passion, so the guests can really have a feel of what this scholar has mentioned in her book.
This is an engagement that has brought together my artistic trajectory as an art scholar and an artist, but also working with various communities and publics, working with disadvantaged women and youth through the Women and Youth Art Foundation, which I founded in 1994. So it also shows a lot of possibilities for young people who are aspiring to have a collection. So today we have the launch of this book, which is a text that engages that exhibition, where we have about 14 scholars from different parts of the world, from the UK, from the US, from Germany and France, and also Nigeria, writing about that exhibition. And it's very important in the sense that there's very little written about female artists in Nigeria, and female artists are contributing immensely to the development of arts in the country. And so this is an addition. And I think that every artist should be documented. And this is a documentation that looks at just one exhibition. So there's many more that we can do. There are many more we can do in terms of documentation.
The intricacies of what the design concept of Adire entails is further emphasized by this scholar.
Today we are launching a book that derives from an exhibition I had in 2019, which is titled Indigo Reimagined. And we looked at the very interesting technique of cassava starch resist, known as Adire Eleko, which was a technique that was evolved by Southwestern women, Yoruba women in particular. And so what I did basically was to create a lot of awareness about our indigenous technique of fabric designing, and to say that a lot of emphasis has been placed on cloth. But then there are a lot of other things that go along with textiles. And so it was a story, the backstory of cloth.
The need for Nigerians to take pride in culture is being re-emphasized in this room. Entertainment, arts, and fashion are ways of getting this message gleefully across, especially to future generations. The role this female scholar is playing in this regard is applauded by the art community.
She goes back into our old art, take something from there, and then make it, renew it, and make it better than it was. So she's a cross between the traditional and the modern.
Professor Peju is an artist, a prodigious artist. He's a scholar, and also She is an entrepreneur. She's a trainer. She has trained a lot of young ones and given them direction. As a collector, I admit to the fact that she has one of her iconic works in the Yemisi Shillong Museum of Art. What Adire is just like every other one, except that the dyes are more long-lasting. There is a lot of iconic messages in our chosen iconographies. That depends a lot on how our forefathers used to, and our mothers used to adorn their wares and also communicate. So that's what you believe that for in Adire. Adire is not just the ordinary one. There's a lot of meaning behind those patterns you see.
I define art as ability to represent thoughts, in that all artistic works are meant to represent the thoughts, the way of life of the people, their conception of the world, their worldview, and how they relate to their environment for survival. And therefore, it is clearly a way of life. It's not anything that has been conjured from anywhere. And my position as an academic is that our thought processes reflect our ability to relate to our nature for survival, for life. And therefore, it is through how we relate that we conceptualize, that we react. And thinking is thinking to find solution to problems that you encounter as a way of surviving in your environment. And therefore, it cannot be universal. Culture is pluriversal. Because our realities per the geographical location we find ourselves are not the same. However, there is something that transcends, which binds humanity together. And it is that defines what we call God, or the perception or the conceptualization of God, which is unique in everything.
The 206-paged book is a compilation of scholarly thoughts on the Adire fabric, as Professor Laiwola has always been championing her love for art through these cultural clothings, which brings her words to life.
Our wordsmith for this week is called Jackpotization by John King Ayanfe. We increase in population. That should be celebration. That isn't our situation. We breathe in inflation. We perpetually sing lamentation. We are fed frustration, extended problems without solution. What is our resolution? In this wahalalized nation, this land epitomizes oppression and even royal intimidation, castrating great dreamers' concentration. Daily, they beget corruption. Stolen billions in mention. Our GDP boasts elevation. Our livelihood conveys depression, mass deprivation, gross dehumanization. My people suffer povertization. They use big diction to cause us confusion. Liabilities they are, nonsensization. Our protests became condemnation. Lekki, that planned massacreization. Our youths plan jackpotization. Our ignorance, their embezzlementation. This land needs beautification. Behold, for this nation, morrow brings an expectation. There shall be realization. Portrait your own lamentation. Stories for unborn generation. Their deeds, my composition.
Taking a moment now, when we return, we still have your works of art, then a solo show by another creative. Do stay with us.
And these are the works of art you sent in this week. Let's begin with The Schoolboy, an acrylic and charcoal on board work done by Akinola Olaiton. Then Inner Piece is a mixed media on canvas work done by Taiwo Odejimi. Adetula has this one done with mixed media on canvas called Men After Flower. I think it's counting down to Valentine. Then Musing is an oil on fabric work done by Bakari Babatunde. This digital painting is called Desire by Ojo Adebisi. Then Fashion is what Pelumi Akogun is capturing with this pen on paper work. This mixed media on paper piece is called Freedom by Lucas Kumba. Then Miguel Escalona is showing us Deep Thoughts, an acrylic on newspaper piece. While the 11th hour is done by Mark Duke with pen and acrylic on canvas. And that concludes the works of art you sent in recently. We really appreciate you for always sending them in with different amazing concepts and encourage you to keep them coming.
Outside is a solo exhibition by Bumi Augusto at the Cole Gallery in Lagos.
These highly conceptual works of art have been painted by multi-talented creative Bumi Augusto for a homecoming exhibition which held at the KO Gallery in Lagos.
The title of this exhibition is Outside, and I decided that title because I am based in London at the moment, but I was born and raised in Lagos, Nigeria, so this is my homecoming. So my entire practice follows this world called within, so I wanted to look at the opposite of that, which was outside, and look at that in a space that actually feels familiar to me.
Focusing on the interactions of three hybrid siblings, Aruaro, Agama, and Irunoji, the paintings explore themes of ancestral memory, belonging, and love.
In my practice, I have developed an entire world that is in my head, and it's called Within. And within, I have multiple characters that have mutations based on my upbringing in Lagos. So, for example, there's the character Agama that has the tail of the Agama lizard. There is Irunoji that has braids coming out of their eyes. There's Aruaro that has tribal marks that have a second set of eyes behind them. And those are the three main characters in this body of work. And here we see them all interacting around the domestic space. So in the works, you see Aruaro watching her siblings, Agama and Irunoji, going about their lives, falling in love, making money, working. So it tells the general story of life, but through the lens of fantasy.
There's a lot of hybrid works, It's got a lot to do with the African motifs, and so you can see the Nigerian element of culture in every work of hers. And then she has, these characters that have hybrid eyes, which is actually tribal marks, which are in the middle of the face. So the eyes actually looking out and seeing, the ancestors. So it's really got everything, the culture, all in each work has got something that is so relevant to Nigeria.
I'll say Bumi is quite talented, and she comes up with very unique pieces. Very beautiful. I don't know, I like them, but very unique.
Her works are deeply personal as she paints from within, capturing traditions, personalities, and her encounters in the journey of life.
My inspiration comes from also fantasy, but my fantasy is very rooted again in Nigeria and Nigerian art history, because I didn't want to just pull from an experience that came very late in my life, that's being my life in London. So using everything that I grew up with and what I've learned abroad and combining everything to make a new world, and looking at science fiction and cinema and psychology. So a lot of these works also speak to psychological concepts. Some even speak to economics. So for example, there's a piece in this exhibition called The Invisible Hand Sprays Money Too, that references the economic theory by Adam Smith about the invisible hand. So as much as it's fantasy, it reflects real life as well.
Really impressed by the mix of different mediums and how they come together nicely, and the way she picks her colors. We have greens, purples, browns, reds, blues, mixed in ways that you wouldn't see normally. It's kind of new to me, the mix of colors and the mix of materials. And then again, I would say mythology that she works with is also interesting as well. Seeing things like clothes on a line, the agama lizards, the breeze block patterns. It's very interesting, and it feels very Nigerian, but also otherworldly.
Outside is the first solo exhibition by this artist in Nigeria, and most of the images displayed are done in pastel.
Let's give you an insight into what we have in store for you when you tune in next time.
On the next edition of ArtHouse, we enjoy Hazi's African Maritime Art Exhibition at Alliance Francaise in Lagos. Light Resolution, an exhibition by Akeem Adeleke at the National Museum in Lagos. We encourage you to keep liking, sharing, and viewing our page so more people can enjoy the ever-bubbly and ingenious art scene in the country.
Your ArtHouse experience doesn't have to end when the show is not on television. Interact with us on our various social media platforms. See any edition of ArtHouse on our website or YouTube page. Join our very interactive Facebook page by joining the group on ArtHouse on Channels. We're everywhere.
That's the program today. Thank you so much for being a great company, and let's do this again next week. But remember to interact with us online on our various social media platforms. I'm Melinda Akinlami. Keep that creative spirit alive.